think that's centered. Okay, I'll plug in my iron. All right, this is our flower bouquet that I have been working on for a few days. I had to take a break from it for a little bit because of some other stuff in the studio, other work in the studio. So today I am going to try to attach it to the frame. I'm using gel flux, and I'm using a Heiko iron, and I'm using Stellar 6040 solder. This is a copper U-came frame. I have soldered all of my this flower, and this flower are soldered together separately. Now, because this is in a frame, I have taken these little cushions and I've raised my glass up so that it would not attach to the frame at an angle. It would be straight, and because there's a lip on this frame, if I didn't have those, then it would lay a little bit crooked. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've plugged my iron in. I solder at 410. So we're going to get started. The first thing I'm going to do is attach my flowers together. All right. I'm going to clean my iron. And I'm going to get a little bit of solder on my iron. I'm going to hold this one down because it's sprung up just a little bit. So I'm going to attach that. Let my solder sit a second so it will solidify. And I'm going to attach that one. And I'm going to attach it here. All right, now I'm going to bead this up a little bit because it looks a little flat. Just make it a little prettier. Same thing with this one. Bead this up just to make it look good. All right, now I'm going to put flux over here where these join together, here, oops, and here. My pen popped out. So I'm going to attach these two together right here. All right, so here we go. Solder this together and solder this together. There we go. Okay, so now this is all my flowers are soldered together. My whole piece is soldered together. The next step is to solder it to this copper cane framing. Okay, when you do this, solder, when you put your flux on here, wherever your flux is, that is where your solder is going to flow to. So you don't want to have a big solder blob on your frame. You want to kind of keep it neat and as small as you can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Sharpie marker and I am going to mark each place where my frame is going to attach. So every place the copper foil touches this frame, I am going to solder this piece to my frame. That is how it all joins together. Oops, that one's probably not big enough. See if I can get that off. Do that one again. There we go. Looks better. Okay, so I've marked those. Now I'm going to put just a dab of flux on my frame and on my foil where they connect, like so. I'm going to do that on each of these joints. You don't need much flux, just a little bit. Try to keep your flux inside your Sharpie mark. And one more joint right here. Okay. Now, it doesn't take much solder, so I'm just going to get a little bit of solder on here, not much. And I'm going to kind of do this at an angle. where it is going across my joint and my frame. There we go. Soldered on. Frame's in the, my stand's in the way. Can't get to it. There we go. So what you're trying to do is connect your frame and your solder line. So I'm trying to connect the frame to the solder line. There it goes. Sometimes you have to heat copper up before it will accept the solder. It will accept the solder, but sometimes it needs to be hot to take it. So if you're having a problem, what's one of the things you can do is just heat it up by laying your iron on your copper tubing or copper framing, whatever it is you're working with, to heat it up a bit. Okay, just a few more joints and I will have it done on the front side. There we go. Okay, it is attached. All my seams look pretty good. My sister's over there watching me, telling me to take my hat off. My head must be in the picture. Sorry about that. She's watching in case somebody has a question. Okay, so there's that. Now I'm going to unpin it and I'm going to flip it over. Whoops. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. The exact same thing I just did. Take these out from under here. I don't need these anymore. These are just some little cushions that when I bought some glass, they were between the sheets of glass, and I saved them. That's all that is. So I don't really even know what it is, what it's made of, but they work great. If you need to raise up something, you can use money to do that. Just don't use a penny, because a penny will solder to it. So it's soldered together here and here, here, here. Okay? And so I've got all my joints fluxed. Solder my flowers together on the back side. And 1, 2, 1, 2. I think that is, oh, I got one more right here. There we go. Now this is all soldered together, so the next thing to do is take my Sharpie and do the same thing I did on the other side. At each joint, where it's going to join a copper foil solder seam, you want to put a little circle right here, and this will help keep your solder from spreading across your frame. It just makes your joints look tidier. All right, same thing. Oops. Guess I need some flux. Ain't gonna work without flux. Just put a dab of flux. Make sure you've got flux on your copper foil joint and your copper framing. You can do this with zinc framing as well. I had this piece of copper. I had bent it for something else, and it was too long or too big, and so I saved it to make a C-shaped frame for a piece. So that's how this came about. All right, here we go. Just join them together. That one doesn't look real neat. I have to go back and touch that one up. Looks a little bumpy. I'm kind of holding this at an angle so that it touches both my copper foil line and my copper tubing, copper frame. And I get solder connecting the two together. Okay, let's put a little bit of flux on this one and see if we can't make it look a little neater. There we go. That looks better. All that looks good now. There we go. So all of our framing, all that's done. So our next step is we're going to put this handy hanger up here at the top. Now this is UCAME. All right, and it's warm, so I'm going to use my glove. All right, this is UCAME. This handy hanger will slide right down in this slot like this. But once again, and I've got to flux this and I've got to attach it. But the first thing I want to do is I want to tin this piece, and then I'm going to attach it to my copper tubing. So let me tin it. I need some needle nose pliers. Hold tight. Okay, I'm going to tin this piece right here by putting flux on it. And then I'm going to take my iron and I'm just going to put a thin layer of solder on here. This just makes it easier to attach to your copper. It already has the solder on it, so it makes it a lot easier to attach, but it is very hot, so I'm going to flip it with the needle nose pliers. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Put some flux on it. And then I am just going to put a thin layer of solder on there. Now I can take this piece and I can put it down inside this frame. But it is very hot, so I am going to do this carefully because I don't want to burn myself. Put it in here. Okay, so it's going to go like this. All right, once again, I need to put some Sharpie marks up here where I do not want my flux to, or my solder to exceed this line. Whoops. Okay. So I'm just putting a line all the way around my piece. Now I'm going to flux it all the way around. Put flux on my handy hanger. All right, and now the key to this is to keep your handy hanger straight. So I'm going to do it like this and use gravity to my advantage and solder it right here first so that it's laying flat against the frame, and that will keep it from twisting. So I am going to put some solder right here and attach it to my frame. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to attach this side. Come around to the back and do the same thing, attaching it all the way around, the whole thing. Okay, make sure it is smooth and it's a pretty joint. There we go. So now our hanger is attached, but I need another touch of solder right here because there's a hole and I want to fill in this hole. So there you go. It is attached. All that black on there, that's just dirt from the where the solder and the flux, it's like basically it's burnt flux. And I see a little dab of copper foil right there, so I'm going to touch that up. There we go. So it's basically just dirt. It's oily dirt, burnt oil. All right, now my next step is I am going to clean this. I'm going to clean it with Quick Clean, get it cleaned up really good. The Sharpie marker will come off with alcohol or Quick Clean or water. It doesn't matter. And I use the same process when I'm attaching to a zinc frame. So we'll turn the camera up and I'll tell you what my next steps are. My next step in this is to do the wire work, but I want to make sure it is good and clean. Before I do that, I will add wire to my leaves for leaf veining, and then I'll add some curlicues. I'll probably do that as a video and post it as a video rather than doing it as a live. So.